Hey, what's up, guys? Rideshare guy here, and today I'm going to do a quick review of a company called Metromile. So, as you guys know, insurance is kind of a huge issue right now for rideshare drivers. So, whether you do Uber, Lyft, Sidecar, or pretty much any service, insurance is still something that hasn't been completely worked out. Now, in my mind, the coverage isn't a huge problem right now. There's some issues with the coverage that I can go in that I've gone into on my site, but today we're going to talk about Metromile to see if they solve the problem of whether or not you're going to get dropped by your insurance carrier. So that's really the biggest problem in my mind right now. If you get into an accident or if your carrier finds out that you're driving for Uber and Lyft, they could drop you. They could potentially drop you and you'll have to figure out new ways to get insurance. Now, Metromile has come along and the reason why I bring them up is because they're in California, Washington, and Illinois right now. And they have an official partnership with Uber. And so they actually are now okay with rideshare drivers. So they're one of the first companies in California. They're the only company in California as of today, which is huge in my mind because that's the biggest rideshare state. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about them, see if they're a good fit, do a quick review, and tell you everything I know about them because I've spoken to them. They're not an advertising partner or anything like that of mine, and you'll see from my review, I'll definitely highlight some positives, but I'll also highlight some negatives. So going forward, so if you guys haven't heard of Metromile, I've mentioned them in the past because they provide a little device called a metronome, and it's something that I've been using to basically track my miles and track my trips for tax purposes. I mean, I calculate my mileage and I take logs, but then this is also kind of like a backup that I've been using because it has a pretty cool dashboard where you can log on online or log on through an app and see all of your trips. So it's definitely a cool tool. It's free. I definitely recommend getting that because it's completely free. And the reason why they give that is because they then try to sell per mile insurance on top of that. So to everyday normal people who aren't drivers, you can get insurance through them and pay per mile, right? So you'll pay a premium and then you pay for every single mile on top of that, you'll pay 5 cents, 6 cents, whatever it is. So basically this type of insurance is great for people who don't drive a ton but have a car. So that's kind of how the company got started. Now recently they actually partnered up with Uber. And with their Uber partnership, they still provide a metronome, and the metronome actually attaches to your OBD2 port, which is a little 12-pin port right under your dash, and pretty much every newish car has one. It doesn't even have to be that new. You probably have one and may not even know it. You plug it in and it tracks your GPS and has some other cool features. But as far as the actual insurance product and how it relates to Uber drivers, so I actually went and got a quote. Now, I currently have insurance with one of the top insurance companies, one of the big five or whatever. And my quote is, let's see, I can pull it up right here. It's actually, so for 6 months, I pay $290 every 6 months. Now I have a pretty solid policy. I have a clean driving record. I have, no accidents, maybe one ticket, a few years ago, but nothing recent. So my premium right now is for 6 months. So this is with my current insurer, not Metromile. It's $290. I've bought it, bodily injury liability at 300K, property damage liability at 100,000. Under UIM, which is the underinsured and whatever motorists, that's 300,000, and then comprehensive and collision, I have a 500 deductible on each. So that's a pretty standard policy, nothing special or crazy or super high limits or super low limits. I actually set those limits because those are the minimum required limits to have an umbrella policy, which is something completely separate, but also not a bad idea, especially if you're worried about liability or anything like that. So that won't apply, though. That umbrella policy won't apply to anything you do with rideshare. That's kind of something separate. So basically that's my current policy. Now I actually went and got a quote with Metromile to see how they compare, and I can read you my quote right now. So I was able to get pretty much the exact same policy. The only difference was with the liability coverage. Instead of getting 300,000, which is per person and then per occurrence. So per person it's $300,000 limit, per occurrence it's $300,000 limit. With Metromile, they didn't offer that. It was a 100,000 per person, 300,000 per occurrence, which is very similar. Not quite the same, not quite as good, but in my mind, it's not a huge difference. So I got a quote, and their quote actually worked out to $46.50 a month, plus 6.8 cents per mile. So comparing that to my 6-month quote, basically, if I were to drive 1,000 miles a month, non-rideshare related, which is about what I do, Metromile would come out to $687 for 6 months, which is more than double what I pay. So actually my break even point with Metromile, where it would be cheaper than $290 every 6 months, I would only be allowed to drive 162 miles per month. So right off the bat, I can see that Metromile is pretty expensive. And I mean, to be honest, it's more than pretty expensive. It seems to almost be double my quote, because I think 1,000 miles per month is pretty standard. Maybe 800 is what most of you are going to be driving. And in that case, you'll be paying way more with Metromile. So that's kind of my thoughts on the actual insurance product. But now you might be wondering, hey, what about these Uber drivers, right? How does it relate to being an Uber driver? So right off the bat, if I decided to switch, I would have to pay a lot more. Now, where it comes in handy for Uber drivers is that since they are the only company right now in California, and honestly one of the top companies across the country, and since they're in Illinois and Washington, they are offering this partnership with Uber, where basically what they say is that if you're an Uber driver, you sign up just the exact same way, and all of your miles while you're on a trip or after you've accepted a trip with Uber, basically that transfers over to Uber's commercial liability, which is just how it'd be normally. But let's say you get into an accident or something happens, basically they're okay with you being an Uber driver, right? Most insurance policies are actually going to drop you right now if they find out that you're an Uber driver. So like I've always said, the coverage isn't really the problem, and Metromile doesn't do a whole lot of difference with the coverage. They provide their insurance up until the point where you accept a trip, and then Uber's takes over. And it's basically just more seamless transition. So that's how it works as far as Metromile with Uber. Now, there are a couple things you need to watch out for, because I know a lot of you are also Lyft and sidecar drivers. So what happens when you're out there driving? Let's say you do decide to opt for Metromile, right? Because they do, I mean, you're going to pay more, but they do kind of remove some of that uncertainty, and you won't get dropped. You know that they're completely okay with it because they have this partnership with Uber. But the problem is they actually don't integrate with Lyft and Sidecar. And I guess my sources inside of Metromile and Uber are telling me that it's a 5-year partnership that Metromile and Uber have. So they're going to be exclusive to Uber for 5 years. So this problem that I'm about to detail is going to be around for a while if you want to opt for Metromile. Because let's say you're out and you're driving Uber and Lyft, and you get a Lyft request, right? You accept it, you go on. Now, as soon as you go on to a Lyft request, Metromile will no longer cover you. But they don't know that you're now on a Lyft request. So they're still tracking your miles. So if you drive 10 miles on a Lyft ride, they're going to charge you for insurance. But if you were to get into an accident during that time, Metromile is not going to cover you. Lyft's insurance will take over. So effectively, you're paying double insurance, which kind of sucks. And if you're driving primarily Uber, you're only getting a few Lyft rides, few sidecar rides here and there. It's not a huge problem, but still, I'm a little disappointed with Metromile that they weren't able to ink a deal that provides integration with all services, because we know as drivers that many drivers, a majority, are doing multiple services. I mean, from Metromile's point of view, it probably makes sense. Hey, we're going to go for Uber. They're the biggest. They're the best right now. So for them, it probably makes a lot of sense. But as for drivers, I'm not sure that it makes sense yet to switch to Metromile because of this issue that they can't track your Lyft and sidecar miles, and the fact that it's just pretty expensive. So for you guys, now you have all the information. If you have any questions about Metromile, how the policy works, I definitely recommend, if you have any questions or you're interested, at least go get a quote from Metromile. It's very easy. Enter your information, enter exactly what your current policy is, and then you compare apples to apples. Don't enter anything different, because then obviously you're not comparing the same thing. So take a look at your current policy, enter the same limits when you get your Metromile quote, and then that way you'll be able to figure out how does it compare, and then you can decide, hey, is it going to be worth it for me to switch? Am I okay with the current risk? I mean, I predict that by the end of 2015, there's going to be a lot more options for drivers with companies that are starting to offer hybrid policies and things like that. So the good thing about this Metromile and Uber partnership is that it's really kind of shook up the industry, and you're starting to see a ton of insurance companies, Geico and MetLife and all these big boys, say, oh crap, there's hundreds of thousands of drivers, and they're going to be switching to Metromile or other companies like that are offering hybrid policies or rideshare okay policies. So I think we're going to see a lot of them now that they see that there's some money in it. They're going to start shifting, they're going to start changing things, and there's going to be a lot of options in the next few months for drivers. All right, take care, guys. If you guys like this video, like, comment, subscribe. Definitely follow me on YouTube. I'll be providing tons of content, and if you have any insurance questions, just let me know.